There's a lot of crazy reports coming out of Raiders camp. Apparently, yesterday things got heated when a rookie center took it to Robert Spillane, and then apparently Maxx Crosby threw some punches. Absolutely crazy day of Raiders practice. But we also got some updates coming out, and we got a game tomorrow, and we're going to talk about all of that. I'm very excited for this one. Let's get right into it, talking about essentially what happened. A lot of the different reporters that are at camp kind of posted tweets. Paul Gutierrez gets really detailed into it. He essentially says that there was a wild Raiders camp moment. Robert Spillane and UDFA center Will Putnam got into it twice. Then Maxx Crosby entered the fray, throwing at least 3 punches at Putnam before ripping Putnam's helmet off and throwing it downfield. That's pretty intense if you guys ask me. I reached out to the guy that I speak to, and he told me based off of what he saw, he did kind of miss it, but he did see that Will Putnam and Robert Spillane were getting into it a little bit. And apparently it was because Putnam was taking snaps, and apparently he was getting after it a little bit. And what's interesting about the fact that Putnam is getting after it a little bit is apparently this guy's moved up the Raiders depth chart. Apparently Putnam is now the Raiders' second team center, which he wasn't technically last week, or I guess before the Raiders played this last game. Antonio Pierce talked about Putnam a little bit in a presser, and he actually put it out there that Putnam looked good. He was one of the UDFAs that looked good in this past game. We're going to get into Putnam's tape here in a second. I want to show you guys 4 or 5 plays why I don't agree with Antonio Pierce. But regardless, Will Putnam apparently got after Robert Spillane, and then Maxx Crosby got into it and he threw a couple of punches. And that's interesting because Maxx Crosby is not the guy, at least in my opinion, to be known as a guy that kind of fights and gets into it with especially UDFAs. But I could definitely see, maybe Putnam says something, maybe something else happened between the two that maybe the reporters didn't hear, right? The reporters are not up and close to the action the way the coaches are, the way the players are. So I find it interesting regardless, but I do like the fact that Maxx Crosby is kind of setting the tone a little bit. What I want the Raiders defense to do this year is not to take anything from anyone. If Patrick Mahomes trash talks the defense, I want every single player to get involved. I want the linebackers to start taking those shots. I want to see Malcolm Koonce and Christian Wilkins and Max. I want all these guys to start taking shots. I want this defense to play as one unit, and I want them to have that bully mindset, that we're not going to back down. In fact, we're going to come out there and we're going to kick your ass. I want to see that mindset from the Raiders defense this year. And watching the Raiders defensive line against the Vikings first team unit, and watching Christian Wilkins specifically, man, I think the Raiders have that potential to actually do that. Now, I don't know if they're going to physically beat people up, right? Like, I don't think Maxx Crosby is going to, punch Joe Alt in the face or anything like that. But I think our defense can be absolutely dominant. And I love the fact that things are getting physical at the Raiders camp. Now, it is important to note that yesterday wasn't a physical day of practice at all. From the guy I spoke to, he said it was really just a walkthrough. And he was very shocked to see that Maxx Crosby had a helmet in his hand, and there was a player without a helmet, and then Maxx Crosby apparently chucked the helmet downfield. The guy told me that he was very surprised because up until that point of Raiders camp, it wasn't, you didn't really take much away from it. A lot of it was just slow-paced walkthrough. So maybe Maxx Crosby, ended up doing what he did because the center wasn't playing at the same speeds. I'm not sure. I don't know exactly what happened. But again, I love the fact that the Raiders are getting after it, man. To me, this is what you got to do in practice. And you also got to set the UDFA guys straight. You got to make sure they understand who they're, essentially talking to. Robert Spillane is the captain of our defense. Maxx Crosby is the captain of our defense. And then Maxx Crosby is the captain of the entire team, right? He's one of the leaders. So very interesting moment for the Raiders camp. Crazingly, that's the first fight that the Raiders had officially where punches were thrown. I know there was a couple of scuffles in, I believe it was the first week that Raiders had camp. I forget who it was, but 2 of the backup guys, offensive line, defensive line, ended up getting into a fight. But it might not have been like this. At least that's not how it was described to me. It was more of just pushing, shoving. But regardless, I'm excited for this one. Now, there's another interesting report that actually came out about 2 days ago, right? And that was that Davante Adams was asked if he would play in the preseason. He was asked his thoughts on the preseason, and he got into it a little bit. And essentially, he said that if I'm choosing, I'm not playing, right? Preseason to me doesn't make sense. He was talking about how he hasn't really played in the preseason since I think it was like the 2016-2017 season. And it makes sense when you're a superstar player you don't play in the preseason, because preseason's usually meant for guys that are younger, guys that are developing, guys that need to potentially make the roster. And with Davante, he's a top 5 wide receiver, but Antonio Pierce had something completely different to say.
You said starters will play this week. Davante last night said he'd choose not to if it was up to him. Will there be a conversation, or do you think that it's kind of his point in his career would be up to him?
No, if you're healthy, you'll play.
So right away, you got your star player saying that if he's choosing, he's not playing in the preseason, and then you got your head coach basically shutting that down, saying if you're healthy, you're essentially going to play. Now, what's interesting about that is Davante Adams did not actually practice yesterday, but from my understanding, it was really just a veteran day off for him specifically. There's no injury. There's nothing to that tune. And since Antonio Pierce told us Davante Adams will be playing, I'm pretty sure he'll end up playing against the Cowboys. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't play, to be honest with you guys. To me, Davante Adams doesn't have to prove anything, right? He's one of the best players in the NFL. And I do understand that you want to give your quarterbacks a true look, right? Last week, Aiden O'Connell looked good, but he did that without Davante Adams. And this week, it'll be the other quarterback, Gardner Minshew, that should get to start against the Cowboys. And that hasn't officially been confirmed, but that is what the expectation is. That was also a report that came out of camp. I don't know exactly which reporter it was that I read that from, but essentially, it will be Gardner Minshew that's going to get the first team snaps against the Cowboys defense. And we'll get into the Cowboys here in a second and really talk about what to expect from that team, because the Cowboys take a completely wild approach to preseason. But, Davante Adams essentially said what he said. Antonio Pierce said what he said, and we'll see what actually ends up happening. But I wouldn't mind if Davante Adams doesn't play in the second week, but I'll be honest with you guys, Patrick Mahomes plays in the preseason, Josh Allen plays in the preseason, Brock Purdy plays in the preseason. Those are the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And to me, if, regardless, Davante Adams or, Jerry Jeudy, doesn't matter, right? You can be the best or you can be an average guy. You should want to play in the preseason, especially at this point where the Raiders, we don't really know which one of our quarterbacks is going to end up starting. And ideally, I would like to see Davante Adams at least have one drive with both quarterbacks. I would, if I'm the Las Vegas Raiders, just switch quarterbacks every other drive and then let Davante play 2 drives and then just take him out at that point. And then maybe you let Jacoby Myers and the other guys, maybe finish the first half and you keep rotating the quarterbacks. I don't know. We'll see what ends up happening, but I think Davante Adams should play. I think it does benefit the Raiders. There's a guy that has also actually recently came back in Jackson Powers-Johnson, and Powers-Johnson has been working off to the sideline, and he hasn't actually played yet for the Raiders, like officially out there. He does have the red non-contact jersey. He has been going out there running drills, right? But at any point when it's full contact, which the Raiders didn't really have this week, but at any point when it's full contact, Jackson Powers-Johnson has not, he wouldn't be asked to go out there. So if that's the case right now over practice, I wouldn't expect him to play against the Cowboys. In fact, I think I think what's going to end up happening is Powers-Johnson will play that final game of the preseason. I don't expect him to play this week at all. It doesn't make sense. He just came back. I think yesterday was the second day of practice that he officially had. The first one was the open practice on the 14th, which was 2 days ago. And in that practice, he was standing off to the sideline, so he wasn't actually out there taking snaps. And I know a lot of fans were at that open practice, but some of the guys not the guys that are actually covering the Raiders, but some of the fans that I've spoken to have told me that they didn't feel like the Raiders were going 100%. It didn't really feel like these guys were, it was live action at that, but I'm not 100% sure. That's what I was told by at least 2 different guys. And we'll see, man. We'll see what ends up happening. I know the Raiders have kind of cooled it off. Training camp is still here technically, but the first part of training camp, which was in Southern California, that part of it's over. Right? The physicality part of it has now kind of been removed a little bit. And at this point, it's about health. Guys got to stay healthy. Guys got to get ready because we have had some injuries already on the offensive line. Andres Pete didn't practice yesterday, and apparently that's due to an injury. Cody Whitehair did not practice yesterday. That was due to an injury. So we're at the point where we're going to be missing our, at least at the moment, starting left tackle, left guard. So we'll see what ends up happening. It's going to be interesting now. Antonio Pierce did talk a little bit about a center in Will Putnam, obviously the guy that started that fight against Maxx Crosby. Check out what he had to say, then I want to watch a little bit of his tape.
Yeah, I mean, every year you got 3 to 5 guys that just kind of pop up, right? It's just like, man, check this guy out. And I say Will Putnam, center. He's done a really good job for us. We got some other guys, linebackers. Amari's done a really good job. Amiri's done a really good job as far as just stepping up, being physical.
Now, I understand Antonio Pierce talked a little bit about Putnam, and I'm not sure if AP actually really watched his tape and really felt like, hey, this guy's a good player and we want to move him up the depth chart, because I don't feel like I saw that watching his tape. In fact, I would make the argument the reason why Putnam moved up the depth chart isn't because he was great, but because of the guy in front of him, who was Ben Brown. Ben Brown was the Raiders' quote-unquote backup center. He was taking all the number 2 snaps. Ben Brown was really, really, really bad. So I almost feel like it wasn't Putnam that had a great game, more so than Ben Brown had a really bad game, if that makes sense. We'll watch some of this guy's tape. I didn't really think the guy was, absolutely incredible. I do think he had some good plays, but, there are a lot of plays like this. And this is fourth quarter, 14 minutes left. So, this is like backup guys. And you can see on this one, he's going to have an out block on a power run. You got the guard pulling out front. His block's really simple. He just has to be able to hold number 95. He has to hold his ground. But he ends up getting pushed back on this. And you don't want that, right? You don't want this guy to push you back and kind of get over the top. You want to be able to hold your block on this one. So it's not a huge deal, but there are a lot of plays like this that I had seen on tape. Take this next one as an example. You're going to get him to snap the football to the quarterback. This is 2nd and 5. And he's going to essentially get stood up, and then number 94 is going to end up shedding the block. So, again, to me, that's not a good block if, you're the starting center. And again, I understand this guy's a rookie. He's going to get so much better. I don't know who number 94 is. He may also be a rookie. He may also be a UDFA. I don't really know. But he does a good job, right? You can see that it is a double-team block. He's going to stand up Putnam, and he's going to toss him to the side, right? So, again, to me, that's not a good block right there. And I'm not nitpicking. Here's a couple more. You got another power run here. Once again, same thing. He's going to have a backside block. And he just doesn't hold the ground well, right? He ends up just getting pushed back. And then on this one here, you're going to have a 1st and 10. This one's going to be a zone run towards the right of your guys' screen. And he has a reach block on number 94. Number 94 is going to end up resetting the line of scrimmage. Again, you don't want this to happen, right? Essentially what you want is you want that center to get in front of number 94. And it's not a good job. Even the left tackle gets stood up, so it's really not a big deal. But this is not a good block, in my opinion. And again, I'm not nitpicking, right? I'm just going through all the different snaps. And then on this one here, he's going to get stood up and essentially tossed backwards once again. So to me, a lot of snaps that this guy had were not good. It's one thing if you don't really generate movement. It's a completely different thing if you're kind of getting tossed out of there, or if you're missing blocks, you're not doing a good job with processing. All right, it's little things like this. The defense here is going to run a run stunt. 61 is going to go upfield. 57 is going to end up coming underneath it. And Putnam has the responsibility of being able to see that. Right, those two guys have to swap right there because the defensive linemen are running a run stunt. And 57 is going to come underneath it, and you can see Putnam's trying to get off 61. He sees it. You see that, right? He's trying to turn. He's trying to get up to number 51, and he's just not able to actually get there. And you see he's obviously trying to get over there. And again, I don't show you guys these plays to hate on this guy, but I find it interesting that Antonio Pierce was asked which guys have stood out to you that are UDFAs, and Putnam was one of the guys because I don't feel like he really had that good of a game. He did have a couple of good blocks, but for the most part, I felt like he had a lot of losing snaps. And I bring all this up because the Raiders, who's our backup center going into this year? Are we going to rely on Cody Whitehair and Dylan Parham to be the guys? Because, I know both guys can play center, but one of those guys is expected to be the Raiders starting right guard, and the other guy is supposed to be the swing guard and backup center, I guess. But I don't know. I find it interesting. I'm excited to watch some of these guys in this second game. I think that first game, you're a little nervous. It's not the same type of feeling. But I do want to see what those guys can ultimately end up showing. Lastly, let's go ahead and switch focus. Let's end this video on a positive note. Let's talk about this Dallas Cowboys game a little bit. I've covered the Cowboys on the Football Scout channel. I followed this team, closer than I think most Raider fans would essentially follow them. The Cowboys, Seahawks, Bears, Packers, maybe like one or two other teams. I follow them enough to know all of their guys, right? Like I could tell you majority of the players on majority of those teams. And, one of the things I know with the Cowboys covering them is they don't play their starters. And they don't play their superstar players more so. And if you're in a battle, you might have to go out there and play. But generally speaking, the Cowboys don't play starters. So we won't see Dak Prescott. We won't see CeeDee Lamb. We won't see guys like Brandon Cooks and Zach Martin and Tyler Smith. We're not going to see those guys. We're going to see the younger guys. We're not going to see the veteran guys. So it does suck, in my opinion, because Gardner Minshew's going to go out there, and he's not going to have to play Micah Parsons and Osa Odigizua and DeMarcus Lawrence. He's not going to have to throw against Trayvon Diggs or Deron Bland or Malik Hooker, or he's not going to have to play against those guys. And to me, that sucks to hear that, right? Because I want to see our quarterback go up against the first team unit. I want to see the best go out there against the Raiders. And even for some of the battles, if Thayer Munford's going to start, I want to see Thayer Munford against Micah Parsons, because that right there would tell you right away if Thayer Munford's good or not. Like last week, Munford went up against the backup of the Vikings, and this week, I would have hoped that Micah Parsons plays, but the offensive or the head coach of the Cowboys since 2020 has not played any of their starters. Now, that doesn't mean we won't play any starter, right? I think it's more so just the star starters, if that makes sense, for the Cowboys won't play. So, like, for example, Tyler Smith is one of the best left guards in the NFL. He's not going to play. Zach Martin, one of the best right guards. He's not going to play. Dak Prescott will obviously not play. But the Cowboys do have some guys that are competing, right? So, like, Tyler Guyton, for example, is going to be the Dallas Cowboys starting left tackle come week 1, and he's going to play like 40 snaps against the Raiders. So we'll see Malcolm Koonce against Tyler Guyton. We'll see Maxx Crosby anytime that he ends up swapping and going to that side. We'll see him against Tyler Guyton. And, not that Tyler Guyton's a great football player. He's still a rookie. He's still a really, really young player. But I think, we'll be able to at least see one guy that's going to start. And Tyler Guyton looks good, right? I've watched his tape. He looks pretty good. And then we might not see the starting center in Brock Hoffman, who probably isn't that good anyways. But Cooper Beebe is expected to take over the center position, and he'll start for the Cowboys. So I think Cooper Beebe should probably be the starting center pretty quickly for the Cowboys. He's really, really good. He was one of the best guards coming out. Him and Jackson Powers-Johnson were my two top offensive linemen. Obviously, Powers-Johnson went from center to left guard. Beebe went from left guard to center, which is kind of interesting. But the Cowboys drafted him in the 3rd round, and he'll start, right? I don't know if Brock Hoffman will play. Maybe Hoffman will take one drive. But Cooper Beebe will end up playing, so that's another guy we'll get to kind of see. Not that I expect Cooper Beebe to beat up Christian Wilkins, but, it's still a good football player in Beebe. Although he's a center or a rookie, we'll still be able to kind of see him go up against Christian Wilkins a little bit. But more than that, I want to see Cooper Beebe going up against some of the younger guys. Byron Young, although he showed a little bit more upside, he didn't look that good to me last week. Guys like Tyree Wilson, if there's one thing Tyler Guyton struggles with, it's going to be power. So this could be a good matchup to see Tyree Wilson and how he goes up against tackles that are, not small, because Tyler Guyton's 6'8", but guys that aren't as strong, right? They're not as thick. They don't have that mass at the moment. So I'm excited to watch kind of some of the Raiders' younger guys go up against those guys on the offensive line. And then Trey Lance is the Dallas Cowboys backup quarterback. Trey Lance will probably get the start. And we'll see Trey Lance going up against the Raiders' first team unit. And that could be interesting as hell, right? Jack Jones, if he plays again, might get another interception. Or maybe it'll be Jacorian Bennett. Now, Jacorian Bennett didn't practice 2 days ago or yesterday, so I'm not sure if he's healthy or kind of what happened. Or he may have practiced 2 days ago, but he didn't practice yesterday. So I'm not 100% sure if he'll be good to go. But we get to watch Trey Lance, number 3 overall pick, right? We get to see what this guy can do. He will be obviously throwing it to backups. Brandon Cooks won't play. CeeDee Lamb won't play. Jake Ferguson, the starting tight end, will not play. Terrence Steele will not play. So he'll be throwing it to guys like Luke Schoonmaker, who's a 2nd-round pick last year. He was with Michigan. He's should have some upside. John Stevens Jr. is probably better than Luke Schoonmaker. He's the guy to kind of keep an eye on. He's an explosive tight end. And then he will probably be throwing to guys like Jalen Tolbert, Jalen Brooks, just kind of average wide receivers. There's a former Raider that will play, Tyron Johnson, who's with the Raiders I think 2 years ago. He'll probably play a little bit. Let's switch focus. Talk about the defense. Let's talk about our quarterbacks. So Gardner Minshew is going to get the start, right? And Gardner Minshew is going to go out there, and he won't feel the pressure from guys like Micah Parsons, Osa Odigizua, DeMarcus Lawrence. He won't actually feel that pressure from those guys. But to be fair, one of the things we do get to see is, the Raiders' offensive line may be a little banged up. Like, there's a chance Andres Pete and Cody Whitehair both don't play. And I think that actually be beneficial for the Raiders in this game. Because I'd rather see both Thayer Munford and DJ Glaze get the start. And, I think it's a little bit more fair, the fact that you got a backup guys on the defensive line. And it's not all backups, right? The Cowboys do have Mozzie Smith, who they drafted in the first round last year. He's going to start. He's going to play, right? He played last week. He'll probably play the entire, first half of this week. DeMarvin Overshown was a third-round pick last year. He'll probably play. Maris Lufayu, he'll probably play a little bit. And don't sleep. I know it's backups, but don't sleep on the Dallas Cowboys, man. They had 4 interceptions last week against the Rams. 4 interceptions, right? So we're going to see if the Raiders quarterbacks can dominate. I would expect both guys to come out and dominate because it's still the backups no matter how you look at it. You're not playing Deron Bland. You're not playing Trayvon Diggs. And keep in mind, the Dallas Cowboys were one of the top 3 or 4 defenses last year in the NFL. That defense dominated. They had multiple touchdowns, multiple forced turnovers. They were dominant last year. So, the backup guys are going to be good football players as well. And don't sleep on some of the secondary players, right? Wanya Thomas has a little bit of upside. And I understand Dan Quinn was the defensive coach last year, and these guys might be scheme specific, but there's upside with some of these guys, right? Wanya Thomas will play. Marquise Bell will play. Andrew Booth, they just traded for him, I think, like a week ago or something. He'll probably play a little bit. Eric Scott Jr., we'll see if he plays. Jordan Lewis should play. He's a third-round pick. We'll see. We'll see what ends up happening. But I am excited to watch Gardner Minshew. I want to see what he can kind of do going out there. Is Gardner Minshew able to score touchdowns, or does he get stopped, and are we forced to punt the football? Aiden O'Connell, when he comes into the game, is he able to score points, or is he not? Is he able to, get into the red zone, and is he able to punch it in, or are we going to settle for field goals? Right? Because if Aiden O'Connell can't score touchdowns, right? To me, and I'll be honest, guys, if Aiden O'Connell gets 3 drives and all 3 of them end up in, or at least 2 of the 3 end up in field goals, and to me, that's not positive, right? You want to be able to score touchdowns, especially in preseason, especially against backups. I want to see Aiden O'Connell, see what he can do if he gets pressured. One of the guys to keep an eye on, I've been hearing a lot of good things about Marshawn Kneeland. He was a second-round pick this past year. He's a guy that a lot of Cowboys creators that I talk to have been telling me, hey, go check this guy's tape out. He looks really good. So we'll see. He's going to probably start. We'll see what he ends up doing. Can our tackles handle him? He's big, powerful, strong, physical football player. He's kind of like DeMarcus Lawrence, but obviously a lot younger. We'll see what ends up happening, man. Gardner Minshew should have Davante. He should have Jacoby Myers. And even if Davante doesn't play, I think, to be fair, if Davante doesn't play, it'd probably be a little bit better considering that the Cowboys have backup guys, and also considering that Aiden O'Connell didn't have Davante last week. I think it'd be the fair thing to do. Keep an eye out for all of that, man. I'm excited. We'll see what ends up happening. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Hope you guys have a great weekend. And a lot of good things coming, man. A lot of good things coming. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you guys next time with another video.